Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Canvas training for today. We are going to be talking about new quizzes and item banks. Just a quick introduction. I want to jump right into the training. So just a very quick introduction about myself. My name is Matt Miller, and I'm a learning specialist here at Instructure. I've actually been with the company now as well. This April will be 2 years that I've been working with Instructure. I was actually happily retired as of December of 21, and my wife decided that I was home a lot. So she wanted me to go back to work. So even though I can work from home, having being at home and earning an income is usually a pretty good thing. I actually come from community colleges. I'm here in the state of Texas. I worked for 8 years back in the early 1990s when the distance learning first started kind of coming around with video conferencing and some of those things. I was working at McLennan Community College, which is a public 2 year school in Waco, Texas. And then in the year 2000, I moved over to Navarro College, which is another public 2 year college. If you're a Netflix viewer and you've seen the show Cheer, then you probably are familiar with Navarro. I spent 21 years there, involved in all things distance learning. We were a Blackboard school. We used Blackboard from about 2003 until we changed over in about 2017 to Canvas. And so I know a lot about the transition. My job was, even though I was the dean of online instruction, that's a fancy way to say that basically my job was the help desk, the troubleshooter, the trainer, you name it, I did it with all of that with Blackboard and Canvas. And so being able to disengage my Blackboard brain and engage my Canvas brain was something that we all have to kind of go through. But as I mentioned, we're still learning Canvas as we go. There's a lot of great features and things like that. We also know that, just like me, I kind of fell in love with Canvas when we moved over to it. And I'm very, very fortunate to be able to continue that journey in learning and playing around in Canvas and getting to work with folks like you. I would invite you to log into your Canvas accounts. If you want to take a moment to do that, you can go out to the MySU Tech portal at my.wsutech.edu and log in to your portal there. You should be able to see a link to Canvas. You can get directly to Canvas just by going to wsutech.instructure.com, and then you should be able to log in there. While you're doing that, just know that today we are going to have some hands-on activities. I would invite you to play along. We're going to pause and have you create test questions and things like that using the new quizzes feature. And I'll tell you a little bit more about new quizzes versus old quizzes in just a minute. But just know that you can play along. We'll have plenty of time where we'll stop and ask you to jump in and do some things. With that, just a quick look at the agenda for today. So today we are going to talk a little bit about quizzes and how to add quizzes in your Canvas courses. We're going to be specifically talking about new quizzes. Now, at WSU Tech, you actually have access to both classic quizzes and new quizzes. That is not unusual. With my previous institution, we used classic quizzes for a number of years, or for a couple of years, and then new quizzes came along. And I told you that I'm almost 2 years at Instructure here, which means that new quizzes have been around for a little while. I don't know why we still call them new quizzes because they have been around for 2 or 3 years, but I guess we have no better name to call them. But at any rate, just know that Canvas does have two quiz platforms, the classic quiz platform and the new quiz platform. What's going to happen at some time is that new quizzes will eventually replace classic quizzes, which is why we're going to be talking about it today. If those of you who were using Blackboard and brought all your materials over to Canvas, maybe they came in as classic quizzes, and I'll show you how to tell the difference between them here in just a minute. I do not want you to despair. No, you do not have to recreate all of your quizzes from classic quizzes to new quizzes. I'm going to show you a very quick little process, how you can convert a classic quiz to a new quiz. Now, my previous institution, I had some of my faculty that used classic quizzes only. I had some that used new quizzes only, and I had some that used both. So you can use both quiz platforms side by side if you prefer. But just know that eventually WSU Tech will start moving toward replacing all classic quizzes with new quizzes. Why? Because at Instructure, at Canvas, we're going to get rid of them at some time. It won't be any time like in the next year or so, but at some point it will happen. And so this is just sort of a way to kind of prepare you for the changes that come down. So instead of paying for the same real estate twice, we're going to go straight to new quizzes on there. Oh, and by the way, we're going to talk about what some of the new quizzes are as well. But one of the things that I really like about new quizzes is that it does have some quiz question types that maybe you haven't seen before. One of my favorite that we're going to cover today is called Hotspot. So Hotspot allows you to upload an image and then mark on that image the correct answer. So it could be like a body part of anatomy. It could be a part of speech or something, or a math problem that has a certain part of the equation. It could be, for my nursing faculty at my previous institution, they used it to show dosages on a syringe and things like that. And also for anatomy and for geography and maps and things like that. So you're going to, be able to utilize those types of questions. There's also one called Stimulus, where you can present your students with something to review or read or watch or listen to, and then you can ask a series of questions based on that, whatever it is you present to them. So think of it as almost like having a test within a test. With that, you also have ordering, where you can order things by sequence or by chronologically, have students place things in order of process or whatever. And then you also have some really great settings that maybe you didn't have before. And I'll just, I won't give too much away until I show you what those settings are, because I think they're really cool. Whenever you see them, you'll be like, oh, let's see, we got about 19 people here. 10 of you will say, ooh, 10 of you will say, ah, it'll be great. Another thing too, it's really easy to set accommodations with new quizzes. So if you do have students that require some form of accommodation, a real good example of that is to give them extra time to complete a quiz or something like that. You will find that you only have to do that in one place in new quizzes, and it will apply to all tests for that student. If they need time and a half, you don't have to go into every single quiz and make that accommodation change for that student or those students. So you'll find it to be a little bit easier. And then also, one of the things that's really cool too is that at WSU Tech, you all will be using SLO, or student learning outcomes, as well as PLO, program level outcomes. And one of the neat things in new quizzes is that you can actually attach outcomes to different questions on your quizzes, which means that when students take that quiz, yes, they'll make a grade on the quiz, but in the background, yes, there we go, a little applause around, a round of applause. You'll also be able to collect some important data. I understand you have a visit coming soon. I am very familiar with those visits. I've been through a couple of decennials and about 3 fifth-year interims and about 30 substantive changes that I was heavily involved in. So I know exactly from which you speak. Now, we were the Southern Associations of Colleges and Schools based out of Atlanta. You guys are the Higher Learning Commission, I think the Northeast one, if I'm not mistaken. So, so I know I know the pain. Okay. So, at any rate, it's going to be great. So this is the kind of good stuff here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about classic quizzes, but I do want to tell you that you are going to be able to do some wonderful things with new quizzes. In addition to that, I'm going to show you how you do not have to throw away classic quizzes in order to be able to create new quizzes. So we'll talk a little bit about that as we get going. So let's go ahead. I'm just going to flip over here to my courses here. And if you would, you can see I'm kind of logged into your account here. I'm going to actually make my way to this instructor practice course. I don't know if you guys are using the same practice course or if you have your own course sandbox, but if you would, make your way to a demo course for me, and we'll go in and start looking at some of the materials there. So I'm just going to click on a course. While that's thinking about it, I do have a nice little Blackboard comparison guide. I just dug that up because I know that some of you have been, maybe you're, you're still using Blackboard for a little while or whatever, but this just sort of does a comparison of some of the different terminology and things like that. So I want to make sure you have that. You'll notice that I am full of resources, and I will always freely share those with you. There we go. All right. So in my course, what I'm going to be looking for is my quizzes index, my quiz menu over here on the left-hand side. So when you make your way into the course, you can choose quizzes in order to create new quizzes. Now, one of the things, if you did talk about modules or talking about using modules and things like that, one of the things you can do is you can also create quizzes right here in modules. So if I wanted to drop a quiz into lesson one here, in this lesson one module, remember, I can come right over here to the plus sign. And remember, you can add items to the module. Well, I can come down here and choose a quiz. And if I don't have a quiz already made, it's in my course, I can create one. It's going to ask me if I want to choose a new quiz or a classic quiz. I want to choose a new quiz, and I could give it a name, and then I could start working on my quiz right there in that module. So you can create quizzes in a couple of places. You can create it directly in a module, or normally you would just go out here to quizzes. And then in the upper right-hand side, you have the plus quiz button where you could then start creating your quiz there. Once you're done creating the quiz, then you can go back and drop it into a module later. But just know that there is a couple of ways to create quizzes in Canvas. Whichever way you choose, whatever works for you, is what you should stick with, okay? Before we start creating a quiz, I did want to point out to you that there are some quizzes already out here. And one of the things that I can see straight off the bat is that there is a combination of classic quizzes and new quizzes. If I look at the little symbol, the rocket ship over here, that's the dead giveaway. A classic quiz is going to just show up as an outline of the rocket ship, whereas a new quiz is going to be a solid color, okay, for the rocket ship there. And those are the difference between the two. If you haven't seen a classic, I'm not going to spend a lot of time dwelling in classic quizzes, but just to let you see, you would know which one you're in. If you click on the classic quiz here, then you'll see that you can come up here to edit. And in classic quizzes is where you can add your question title and your instructions there. You have this lovely rich content editor that I know that you guys have talked about already, where you can add all kinds of things, including text, but links and videos and all kinds of other things as well. You have your settings for your quizzes right here that lets you shuffle the answers, add a time limit, multiple attempts, that kind of thing. You can even choose what kind of feedback the student will see. All of this, if you are familiar with Blackboard, it's very similar with the types of settings that you had. You can also add a due date and so on. Where questions are built in a classic quiz, that you have to remember to go all the way back up here to the top and click on questions, and then you can add a new question by creating a question, what type of question you want to create, and so on. Right? You could also get out of that real quick. Let me see if I can. There we go. You could also, let me get out of this. Cancel. You can also, if you have a question bank, you can go out and grab X number of questions from a question bank. So if you have a question bank of 50 questions and you wanted to grab 20 questions out of the bank, you could at random to create a random block of questions. You can also go out and find the questions, but that's all classic quiz stuff. All right. If you have a classic quiz though, and you want to create a new quiz out of it, there's a real easy way to turn this classic quiz into a new quiz. And the way you do that is to come over to the right-hand side, click on the three dots and choose migrate. That's it, okay? That will convert that classic quiz into a new quiz without having to put in all the extra work, all right? Once you have it as a new quiz, then you can go in and start editing it. You will find that there's some really cool settings that you didn't have in classic quizzes and things as we go through. You'll notice that as I click migrate, it's going to add a new quiz right down here at the bottom. You'll see that the rocket will be a solid color instead of that little outline, okay? Many times when you import items from Blackboard, when all those items were imported from your previous courses, a lot of them came in as classic quizzes, which is why I want to share that with you, okay? So you can take those classic quizzes and very simply move them over to new quizzes. Does that have to be done today? No, but as you know, over time, as you kind of go through, start converting those classic quizzes to new quizzes, and you'll be one step ahead to help WSU Tech sort of prepare for new quizzes exclusively. Okay. So with that, we're going to go ahead and create a new quiz together. Okay. So up here at the top right-hand side of the page is a plus quiz button. Now, if you're new to Canvas, I know when I first started using Canvas for the first time, there were a couple of little things that sort of jumped out at me. Nobody told me this. It just occurred to me that in Canvas, one of the things that we do is we name our buttons exactly what they do. Okay. And, this is one of those things that you won't be able to unsee now. But up here, if you want to add a quiz, there's a plus quiz, right? Very rarely it does happen, such as a little 3 dots or a little gear icon, which I just say that's Matt Miller's rule of, hey, there's more stuff you can do with this. But generally speaking, whenever you want to add something, whether it's an announcement or something, you will find plus announcement, plus quiz, plus module, whatever. Okay. You won't usually see like an OK button like you saw on Blackboard. You'll see, exactly like I want to update this or I want to do this. So you'll see that the buttons are called that. The other thing I want to point out to you, another little consistency, if you will, little serendipitous little happenstance, is that in Canvas, if you want to do something, you're in a particular part of your course and you want to do something, look up to the upper right-hand side of the screen, okay? You'll find that that's just a little consistency wherever you are in Canvas. If you're like, okay, I'm on this page, what do I do? Cast thine eyes up into the upper right-hand side of the page, and you might just see, okay, well, here's what I do stuff. There's a plus quiz button. There we go. Okay, so just know that there is, again, you won't be able to unsee that now. So my apologies, but hopefully that will be helpful for you. When you click on plus quiz, you're going to see that you have an option to choose a new quiz or a classic quiz here, okay? Now, we're going to be talking about new quizzes, so I want you to click new quiz. And also notice that you can choose to remember this choice for the future if you want to. So if you just want to not have this choice anymore, you could. If I do that and click submit, then it would no longer present me to the ability to go back and choose a classic quiz unless I reset what's called the quiz engine choice, which is those 3 little dots that, if I do choose this, for example, and submit, does that mean I can no longer? No, I can click on the 3 dots up here next to plus quiz. I can reset my choices and I'll have this again. Okay. I'm just going to leave that blank because I like to have choices. Okay. And I'm going to click new quiz and I'm going to hit submit. Now, when you do that, one of the first things you're going to see, if anybody's ever messed around with assignments in Canvas, you're going to see that this looks a lot like an assignment. Now, there's a couple of things here that you did not have with classic quizzes that you do have right here in these settings here. All right. The first thing you're going to see is the ability to add a name. And I'm just going to call this my, WSU Tech sample quiz or whatever. And notice that you can assign a point value. With classic quizzes, you were basically stuck with whatever the point values were on the quiz, and you couldn't choose an alternate point value. With this one, you can. If you want to charge 100 points, you can do that, okay? You can also display the grade as a percentage, or as complete or incomplete, or as a letter grade, or even a GPA scale. If it's a point or a percentage, it really doesn't affect the calculation or whatever in your grade book, which actually we're going to be talking about on Monday, assignments and grading and things like that, our grade book and grading and SpeedGrader and so on. So I hope you will join me on Monday for that. But again, you can choose either one of those. Notice that you can also choose not to count this toward the final grade. So if you wanted to make it to where it was like a practice quiz or something like that, then you have the option to not calculate this as part of the final grade. Okay, I'm going to make this one count. Down here is where you can assign your due date, okay, for the quiz and your availability date. So if I choose a due date, I can click on the little calendar here, and maybe I'll make it next Friday. Now, note that if I do not put a specific time here, oops, sorry. If I do not put a specific time down here, AM or PM or whatever, it will default to the end of the day. And so you can kind of choose however you want to handle that. If you just want it to be Friday at midnight, that's usually, whatever, Sunday at midnight, whatever date you choose. You can also make it to where the quiz will not, students won't be able to take the quiz within a certain window. So you can have a window here. You can put, the week prior, maybe you're going to give them a week. So you could maybe give them the 19th through the 23rd, and they will have that window in order to take the quiz. They won't be able to submit the quiz after that date or before that date. They'll still see it, but they won't be able to actually access and start taking it. It'll be locked until that little window of time. Now, I don't know if you've seen this or not, but just assuming maybe you haven't, I do like to show it. So you'll notice that I've set this quiz to be available between these dates here. I'm going to take that off actually because I'm going to be demoing this quiz. I want to be able to get to it. Okay, that could be happening. All right. So notice that I've assigned the due date to everyone in the class. And what this does is it automatically puts it on the calendar, right? It also notifies the student of that change or whatever. And as soon as a grade is entered, they'll get feedback notifications. But what if you have a student, for example, that needs some extra days to take it? Maybe they had a family emergency or some kind of extenuating circumstance or whatever. I can actually come down here and add an exception to the due date for various students. So if I come down here, you'll notice February 23rd for everyone. I can come down here and add, and let's just say Guy Burnett here had a family emergency and needed some extra days to complete the test. I could actually go down and set a separate due date for that student, maybe give them until that Sunday to complete it, right? It'll be available until that Sunday, at the end of the day or whatever. Okay, so it's just another thing you have. Now, this is not adding extra time to the test. It's adding extra days to the test if you do have students with a valid excuse and melt that heart of ice that you have, and you granted them some grace to complete the quiz after everyone else did. You could do that. All right. And then notice down here, whenever you're done completing that, you can come down here and choose build. So build is what's going to take us into the area for us to start building this quiz. So I'm going to click build here. So in the build menu, hopefully you all can see my screen okay. You'll notice that there is the name of my quiz. Notice that I could edit that if I chose to. Notice that I can also add some instructions here. Okay. Kind of give them a little bit of a background about the test itself or whatever, and then have them do that. Remember, you do have the rich content editor here where you can add, for example, you can add YouTube videos, you can add images, links, all kinds of stuff, including text, all the things you can do with the rich content editor. Here we go. Let's put instructions go here. And then I can start clicking on this plus sign right here to begin adding questions. But before I do that, I did want to point out a couple of things. Number one, you'll notice at the top of the screen that you have this series of tabs. Right now, we're in the Build tab. That's where we build our quizzes. I do want to let you know that there is a Settings tab as well. And just to kind of review a few of the settings that you have for a quiz, you can shuffle the questions on a quiz. So instead of having a random block that would shuffle the questions for you or whatever, if you have a static quiz that has questions on it, or even if you bring in a random block of questions from an item bank or whatever, you can scramble that quiz for each student. So every time they take the quiz, all the questions will be scrambled. Okay. You also can shuffle the answers on all multiple choice questions there as well. So you can choose to shuffle answers around on the multiple choice questions. Just like in Blackboard, remember you had the one question at a time where you could present that. You could also take away the ability to backtrack. So when they went from question 1 to question 2, they couldn't go back to question 1, that kind of thing. You also have the ability to add a password. So if you do have students testing in a proctored location, for whatever with a proctor, then you could provide a passcode, and then the student would have to, the proctor would have to be able to have a password that they would enter in as well. You can invoke a time limit on the test. This is nothing new as well. You can put a time limit. We're just going to put 10 minutes on this one for no apparent reason. It's going to be a small test. Notice that you can also filter IP addresses. Now, this is just something that it's not used very often. We used it for our nursing program because we required some tests to be taken at a particular location. And so we filtered the IP addresses to that location, and that way Uncle Joe from Duluth couldn't jump in and take the test, on behalf of the student. You can also add a calculator to it. You're going to see where you can add a calculator also to individual questions. If you do have questions that require some form of calculation, you have a basic or a scientific type calculator that will appear at the top center of the page there. For that, it's always a good idea to use one question at a time, so that way they have room on the test to kind of look at the calculator also or whatever. And the scientific calculator is not exactly a TI-84, but it does a pretty good job with some of those types of calculations. You have this little feature here called allow clearing of selection. So this is only for multiple choice questions. And if you think about, maybe I'm a student and I'm taking the test, I put an answer on a multiple choice question, but maybe I'm not entirely sure if that's really the answer I'm going to go with. And so I continue on in the test. In order to find that question later, I can clear the selection and say, okay, I want to just look at it again, blank, so I can then make my determination with that. So when I'm guessing that answer, or the answer comes to me in a cloud or whatever, I'm able to find the right answer there. You also have this allowing multiple attempts. Now, this is, again, nothing new to testing using Blackboard or the classic quizzes there. You do have the ability to choose the number of attempts over here, just like you can do with a lot of different quizzes. If I gave them 3 attempts here or whatever, I can then make it a limited number of attempts the students would have. Notice that on the score to keep, that I have 4 options here. I choose to keep the highest of the 3 attempts. I can choose an average of the 3 attempts to choose as the calculation. The latest, or whichever one, maybe they took it once, they were happy, that's the one we'll go with, or whatever, or twice, or whatever the last attempt was. But also notice that you can add a first attempt. So the other attempts that they have will essentially be practice. Okay, they will not be calculated. It kind of poses an intriguing option. If you wanted to give students this, hey, you're going to have 3 chances, but that first attempt is what's going to be kept. The rest of the time, it's just for your enjoyment or knowledge or whatever. You can choose to do that as well. One of the things that I do like too is you also have what's called a waiting period. So whenever you have multiple attempts, you can invoke a waiting period here. And you can basically have, maybe an hour between attempts, basically, or whatever you want. Oops, I'm sorry. Let me try that again. There we go. I can make it to where you can wait days or hours or minutes, or a combination of the 3, to where students would have to wait between each attempt, so they don't go back into the test all hot and bothered and emotional about missing what they missed on the last test and jumping back in and making the same mistakes. In addition to that, you also can choose build on last attempt. This is really good for like professional development type courses and things, where basically when the student takes the assessment the first time, and they maybe make 75%, then whenever they take it the second time, it's only going to show them what they got wrong. All right. So they're not going to have to rehash the stuff that they've already mastered. They're going to only be presented with the things that are left. So whether you use these or not, they are available to you. Okay. Let me take away the waiting period. We'll keep the 3 attempts there. And then down here, of course, you have your student result view, where you can choose what the student will see whenever they complete the exam or the quiz, right? So here you can show them the points that they've earned. You can show them how many points were possible. And then you can also show them the items and the questions of the quiz. You can show them how they responded, whether they got it right or not. You can even show them the correct response. Just know that if you're using a static assessment of 50 questions or whatever. And I had some of my faculty, we had long talks about this over and over again, because they were like, students are, I know they're cheating on it, whatever. Well, yeah, you basically given them all the keys to the test and they're passing it along to their friends. And, not that your students would do that. Okay. But at any rate, the validity and the reliability of a static assessment, it goes down over time. Okay. So just, it's just the way it is. And I'm not even a statistician and know that. So again, the more you reveal to them, then also, the more they'll be able to see and maybe be a print key away from having a key to your test. So just be aware of that. So those are some of the things. We'll talk about reports and moderation here in just a moment, but you do have some really nice reports for quizzes, even outcome reporting, which we'll talk about too. And then moderating, we'll talk about that real quick. So what if you have students who require moderation? So if you choose the moderate button here, one of the things that this does, this is actually a real-time thing. So if you were in the class while the students were taking this quiz, then you would be able to see which attempt that they're on. You'd be able to see what their score was, how much time it's taken them on the quiz itself. You also can go in and you'll see a log here that you can click on for any of the students. You can actually really physically see what quiz question they're actually on at any given time. This can be helpful for you if you are kind of monitoring the students. For example, if a student makes an extremely high score and only, maybe it's a 50 question test and they make a perfect 100 and it took them 30 seconds to complete the quiz. Okay. Not saying that that's a conclusive way in which students might be not very forthcoming or forthright in taking the quiz, but it can be a red flag. Okay. I used to have students ask me, I don't know why I did so poorly on the quiz. Well, let's see, you had an hour to take it and you took it in 5 minutes. Did you even read the questions? Okay. So, you had, sometimes that can be, again, not conclusive, but it will also, but it can also help sometimes in maybe nailing down where the problem might be. Notice that you also have the ability, you have a column here called accommodations, and you have a button over here called moderation or moderate. Okay. So let's just say Michael, for example, does have an accommodation there in your Office of Accessibility Services or Disability Services, and it has determined that that you're going to give them a time and a half. If everybody gets an hour to complete the quiz, then Michael here would have an hour and a half or 90 minutes or whatever. So you can come here to this accommodations pencil here in the accommodations column, and you can click on that, and it's going to ask you how you want to adjust the time. And you'll notice that you can just give additional time, just X number of minutes per quiz or whatever. You can remove the time limit altogether for Michael and Michael only, or you can choose what's called a time multiplier. Okay. The nice thing about any of these three options here is that even though I'm making this quiz for my WSU Tech sample quiz, when I make this change here, it's going to apply to all quizzes in this course. So I'm going to give him time and a half, 1.5 time multiplier. So if this quiz is only 10 minutes, Michael will get 15 minutes. Okay. However, if Michael is taking another quiz in this class that's an hour, then Michael would get 90 minutes and so on. Okay. So just know that when I make the accommodation change here, it applies to all the quizzes for Michael in this course. I do not have to go into each and every quiz and make that accommodation like I would have in classic quizzes. The moderation basically only applies to this quiz. So let's say I'm out here looking and I see, okay, maybe Natalie here is getting close to time here and she has a few more questions to go. Maybe I'll open it up and give her a little bit of extra time here. Maybe a little bit of time. Maybe I'll give her some, maybe I'll give her another 5 minutes to complete the test or whatever. And in doing that, I can give, her 5 minutes on this particular quiz. This will not apply to every test, only this particular quiz. Okay. If you do have a student, like some of you may only allow your students one attempt to take a quiz. Maybe it's a one-off kind of thing or whatever. And a student comes to you and says, oh, there's a technical problem and I got kicked out or whatever we had. All right. If we do run into the situation like that, you can come out here and give an additional attempt. One little change from Blackboard. There's no such thing as clearing an attempt, okay? You only can add additional attempts, all right? And the additional attempt is what will be in the grade book, the most recent or whatever. It will, Canvas intentionally keep sort of a historical record of previous attempts. All right. The nice thing I think that you will find here, for those of you who lamented and had wailing and gnashing of teeth whenever you were using Blackboard and there was a technical issue and the student had to retake a test or whatever, if there is a problem with that, with an attempt, you can come out here and if the student is having trouble, you can basically allow them to continue, maybe give them some extra time to complete the test, and it will actually pick right back up where they left off. Okay. So they don't have to retake the entire quiz. They can just basically pick right back up again. I will say that coming from Blackboard to Canvas, it was always around midterms and finals when we had so many problems with testing. I don't know if it was that way for you guys at WSU Tech with Blackboard, but we always had some issues with testing and things like that. When we moved to Canvas, those issues all kind of went away. We're not saying that that's not perfect, all right? There's still issues that come up, but some of the headaches that I used to face with the old system was kind of not there whenever we moved over to Canvas. All right, good stuff. So we'll talk about reports, and I'll show you some reports from an actual quiz when we get to that. But let's go back to build, and we're going to start building some questions. So I mentioned to you that we have some new question types that we're going to be able to utilize in Canvas. Just as kind of a, so you don't have to think too hard about it on a Friday afternoon or whatever. I do have this, what I call my new quiz example question types. I'm going to share this in the chat with you. You can just make a copy of this, or you can just use this as sort of a way to practice. I did include this on the agenda as well. So if you look on the agenda that I gave you, you'll see some for practice, these little questions. And it's just, this quiz is all over the map. It's a little bit of literature. It's a little bit of psychology. It's a little bit of anatomy, a little bit of basic biology, whatever. It's all over the map. But this is just for fun, just to kind of show you and illustrate how these question types are. So let's go back and let's start building our quiz here. So again, in order to start adding, before I do that, I will talk about these in a little bit. You can add outcomes to the test itself, okay? So just to point that out to you, if you, instead of adding outcomes to individual questions, you can assert outcomes for the actual test itself. And I do want to cover this really quickly because it makes sense. I'm going to go up here to outcomes. And then here you'll see that I can browse the outcomes. Now at WSU Tech, you do have some program learning outcomes that are in each of your sub-accounts or your different departments that you have at your school. You also have some student learning outcomes that everyone at the institution can access. So up here, if I wanted to align outcomes to this quiz as a whole, okay, then I could come out here and click on that and choose. There's the outcomes for the SLO outcomes for communication, for information literacy, problem solving, workplace skills, or whatever. All right. So let's just say I want to open up this SLO 1.0 communication outcomes. You're going to see that there are several outcomes I can choose from. There's the introduction. If you need to click on it, it will tell you what mastery is. It will tell you kind of a little bit about, kind of give you a little bit about the rubric that was used to score and when mastery occurs at 3 or whatever. If you want this particular outcome, you can select it. Maybe you want to select organization and language or whatever. You can, whatever outcomes you want to associate with this quiz, you can choose. All right. And this could be a little 5-question quiz. It could be a 20-question quiz. It could be whatever. Okay. If you want to collect some data that way. And notice that you can add those outcomes to that. Now, if I remember correctly, once students start completing the quiz, I do believe there is a little bit of like a 24-hour wait before you can actually get to the reports or something like that. It seems like there's a time. I have to double check that for you. It's been a minute since I've dug into that, but there is a little bit of a wait time before the reports are available. So if you don't see the reports immediately, don't panic. It does take a little bit of time for that to happen. Now, I want to go ahead and start adding some questions here. So I'm going to click on this right below where our question title is and where the instructions are. I'm going to click that plus sign. And notice that there are all the different question types that I have. All right. The first one, we'll just do a quick multiple choice question because that's something that's familiar to everyone. Everyone should be somewhat familiar with using multiple choice questions. It's probably the most popular type of question that you ask on any type of objective type quiz. I'm going to choose multiple choice. Now, one of the things that you're going to run into in Canvas is that whenever you open or add a multiple choice or any type of question type, it's going to show you what type of question it is, and it's going to invite you to add a question title. Now, this is not where the question goes, all right? So just know that this is not where the question goes. I was confused by that when I first started using it. What you can do here is you can kind of label your questions. So let's just say this question came from chapter 12 or whatever, okay? I can just kind of label that as chapter 12, a chapter 12 question for later use or whatever, okay? So it gives me a chance to kind of label the question really. You do not have to put anything here if you do not want to. It is not required. This is not, it's purely optional to add that label. And then down here where it says add question stem, that's where your question goes. All right. So, and you can see your possible answers. You can see that you can choose to reduce the number of possible answer choices there by choosing the trash can or whatever, or you can add additional answer choices by clicking plus answer. So our question for today is, which of the following novels did Ernest Hemingway not write? Okay. And notice that you do have that rich content editor where you can add images and drop in documents. You can do all that wonderful stuff that you can do anywhere you have a text box in Canvas. You can bold this a little bit, maybe underline it to kind of emphasize the word not if you want to. All right. And then down here is where you can start putting in your possible answers. Now, if you are shuffling your answers, you could always make the first answer the correct one. All right. And then Canvas will scramble those questions around for the student. Or you could just start typing in your answers again. The rich content editor applies. So for those of you who want to add images as part of your answers, or maybe a piece of music or something like that, then you can use the rich content editor to drop in media and all kinds of good stuff. I'm just going to type in words now. So was it a farewell to arms? Under the next question here, was it, the old man and the sea? Maybe the next possible question was, for whom the bells toll. I can't remember for whom the bell tolls or bells toll. Either way, could be a trick question. And then as I lay dying. And then maybe it's none of the above, right? And once you have your answers sort of chosen there, again, you're going to put the button next to the correct answer, which case in this, it's going to be as I lay dying. That was Faulkner. So I'm going to add the button there. Okay. Notice that you can also add comments for each choice the student makes. Now, I know that you all have all the time in the world to do that. So feel free to do it if you want to, but you could. All right. Down here, notice that you can also add comments just in general. So if the student gets it correctly, you can add a general comment for the correct answer. If they get it incorrectly as part of the feedback, you also have a general answer. Whether they get it right or wrong, you can have a little statement or something that no matter what, this piece of feedback will appear. So you can choose that. Notice that you can also choose a point value right down here at the bottom. You have several options as well. Again, if this was a mathematical question, I could show them a calculator here. If I've already selected it in my settings, it will appear at the top anyway, so it may not be that I have to worry about that. You can also vary the points by answer. So if you want some answers to weigh more than others, you could actually choose that choice as well. You can also choose to shuffle the choices. Now, we talked about shuffling choices just in general for the test, but for specific multiple choice type tests, we can shuffle the choices there. Now, when I chose that little checkbox, hopefully you noticed these little padlocks appeared. See, so I click on it again, there they are. So if you have a question answer like none of the above, obviously, if you're shuffling the choices, you do not want that answer shuffled. So you can come over here. Oops, go back to edit. Sorry about that. I got a hair trigger on my mouse. I can click on that little lock there, and it's going to lock none of the above in the final position. And then Canvas will scramble the rest of these for me. Okay. You may have some questions where it could be, A and C. So you can lock A and C and, and then it will scramble the other ones. You get the idea. As we mentioned, one of the cool things about new quizzes is that you can also align individual questions to outcomes. So for this particular question, if there was a particular PLO or SLO, I could go out there and find that outcome, again, just like I did for the test, by clicking here and going out to my outcome class. We may have some outcomes for psychology here. And maybe this is, of course, this has nothing to do with psychology. This is literature, but oh well. Maybe this SLO is what we want, or this PLO rather, is what we want for psychology. We'll add that to that particular outcome, as you can see, or the outcome to that particular quiz question. You also have the ability to add your question to an item bank. So if you are creating your questions from scratch and you want to bank that question for later use, then you can go over here to item banking and choose to add this to an item bank. It's a question bank or a pool, as we called them in Blackboard. I can choose the bank here. It's going to ask me if I want to choose an existing bank, and if there is an existing bank that I have access to, I could choose that, or I could create my own new item bank called Chapter 12 or whatever, and then I can add that question to my Chapter 12 item bank, as you can see. Okay. And then if I'm happy with that, I can click done. Okay. The next question type, and I'm going to pause here in just a moment after we do the next question type and allow you to do some hands-on, okay? But I do want to go ahead and knock two question types out of the way, then you can choose which one you want to do. The next question type is fill in the blank. Fill in the blank, again, is nothing new. You had them in classic quizzes. You probably had them in Blackboard. However, there is a particular way to put fill in the blank questions, and there's some neat little options I hope that you will find kind of fun in this new quiz platform. So if I go to fill in the blank, again, there's that question title, which again, I can label the question as coming from Chapter 12 or whatever. But then down here is where I can start typing in my statement or whatever it is. So what you would do is you would add your sentence or whatever it is here, or paragraph or sentence that you want. But then you're going to need to know where a special key is on your keyboard called the backtick button. Now, the backtick button, you can see from this example, it looks like a backwards apostrophe. Can anybody tell me where the backtick button is on their keyboard?
Yeah, it's up in the upper left by the,
Yes.
by the squiggly.
It's right there underneath the little tilde or whatever that little item is. Okay, they've chosen kind of an obscure key that you never use as kind of the symbol to make a backtick, because they want to use apostrophe because you use those anyway. So they chose kind of an obscure key. Funny little fact: I was doing a training. It's been about a year and a half ago. I was pretty new at Instructure, and I was working with the Department of Education for the state of Nevada, and I forgot where the backtick button is. So I did a little trainer trick. Can anybody tell me where it is? And then finally someone like, yes, there it is. Thank you. So it saved me from looking goofier than I am. Okay. So what you're going to do is you're going to type in, for example, Chaucer. This is for our example. Chaucer is often considered the father of British literature. All right. Spell Chaucer right. But once you have your statement or paragraph or whatever, and you want to start creating blanks for this, you're going to enter it exactly the way it's supposed to be first, and then you can go back. And let's say Chaucer is going to be one of our blanks. So what I need to do is I need to, before the word Chaucer, is to find that backtick button, put a backtick right up there, and then right after the R in Chaucer, I'm going to put another backtick button. Now, when I do that, watch what happens. It's going to bring up the word Chaucer down here as my first option. It's going to ask what type of entry it's going to be. So open entry basically is the student will be presented with a blank, and they will have to text match the word Chaucer. So it has to contain the word Chaucer, which means it could be Geoffrey Chaucer, it could be Geoffrey T. Chaucer, Geoffrey J. Chaucer III, Esquire, whatever it is, as long as it contains the word Chaucer, then it will be counted correctly. Notice that I can also choose a drop-down menu and create sort of a little multiple choice type option that will be scrambled as well. So they would be able to choose Chaucer or Shakespeare or somebody else or whatever. I also can add a word bank. A word bank is that I could start typing in different names, and the student would have to see all those names kind of scrambled up and pull Chaucer or Geoffrey Chaucer or whatever up into the blank in order to get it correct. So you have three different types. I'm going to leave this first one open-ended. So Chaucer, open-ended. And notice that you have the ability to choose some fun little options here as well. So right now I have Chaucer, so it has to contain Chaucer. I could also choose close enough. Now, close enough means that it's in the neighborhood of the word Chaucer. And it uses a tool called the Levenshtein distance, which I know all of you want to know more about. A little light reading. If you want to know more about Levenshtein distance, if you click that little question mark up there, there is a link to telling you all about the Levenshtein distance. All I know is that it's kind of looking at the number of at the letters which number of letters that are misspelt or something like that. So if it was Chaucer with an S, I think that would be a Levenshtein distance of 1. It would say, okay, they got close enough. All right. To Chaucer. It's in the neighborhood of the word Chaucer. They may not have spelt it right. They may have said, Chawcer as opposed to you or something like that. I know what they meant. Okay. The other thing you can do is an exact match where they have to, this is the strictest, right? They have to put the word Chaucer with a capital C as the exact match. Just like with a lot of fill-in-the-blank questions, maybe you're familiar with Blackboard and then even classic quizzes, you could go in and add all the different variations of what you would accept. Geoffrey Chaucer, Chaucer with a lowercase c, Chaucer with 4 M's and a silent Q, or whatever. Okay. Oh, Kevin says he uses medical terminology. Oh my, yes, you guys, for sure. Yeah, just all the little things there. But you guys get the idea. And then there's one called regular expression match. So again, it's kind of close enough that uses another algorithm called Rubular and RegXP or EXP or whatever. No idea what those are, guys. I'm just going to tell you. So don't ask. No, just kidding. If you want a little light reading, you can go out there and look at what those are. Okay. But at any rate, many of you may use that or not. It just really depends on what you want there. I'm going to just say contains Chaucer. But now we're not done yet. You can, within this fill in the blank question, so we have Chaucer as an open entry question. Well, what if I wanted maybe the word British to be another choice? Again, putting a backtick before and after the word British, boom, now I've got another blank, and I can choose a whole nother set. So maybe this one will be a drop down. So they'll have a combination, enter the word Chaucer, and then use the drop down. Maybe I'll put German and French as our distractors here or whatever. And then of course you select that. It will scramble those up. So it won't, British won't be the top thing. In fact, this will be a complete blank, and they will choose to drop down and choose one of the three nationalities there or whatever. Just like before, you could add a calculator here if you wanted to. You can also align outcomes here, and then also you can choose to add this to a bank. If you already have a bank, remember, you can choose that Chapter 12 bank and drop that right in there with them. Okay. This will give you the opportunity then to share banks with other faculty, to also use the, if you're working in a department, you're kind of working on tests together. You have that possibility as well. The next type of questions that we're going to have, and the next type of question that I want to show you is going to be the ordering one. Okay. So I'm going to click on plus down here, and this time I'm going to choose ordering. Now, ordering, if you think about having students place something in a sequence, maybe it's a chronological sequence, maybe it's a process that you want them to show. Either way, you can choose, have them put something in its proper order or proper sequence. Again, with the question title, you do not have to put anything there. But then in the question, in the actual question box, you could then add a question here, like, for example, place the following steps in their correct order. Okay. Notice that you have what's called a top label and a bottom label. Now, you can actually hide these if you want to, but a top label sort of gives your students some guideposts. For example, the first steps, you can type in the word first up here, and then maybe in the bottom label, the last, okay? So you can have first and last. So that way it kind of helps guide the student. You start from the top and you go through the steps that way. If I was asking them to put these historical events in order, I might have earliest and latest or whatever, as my guideposts. And then down here is where you would start putting in your questions. So let's say here, the steps in to make a peanut butter sandwich in their correct order. One thing, a little trick you can also do is to kind of give them kind of the starting point, starting with the first step or whatever. And that way they know kind of the direction. It's been a minute since I've had to think like a student, but I know sometimes they'll get it right or they'll do it in reverse order, saying, well, I just work from the bottom up, like, okay. So if you want to kind of give them that, it'll save you a little headache later by giving them some directions there. So the first thing might be to, gather the supplies. The next might be is to take 2 slices of bread out of the bag. Okay, you would say apply peanut butter to 1 slice of bread using a butter knife. All right, and then maybe the last step is to place the the non-peanut buttered slice of bread on top of the buttered slice or whatever. Cannot type today. All right. And then maybe, you can add steps down here, or you can throw away steps over here. And then maybe the last thing is to, take a bite out of sandwich. All right. Now, so again, you can place those in that type of order there. I do want to share with you, oops, sorry. Again, you can also do something that's kind of fun here. Instead of having each of these items just sort of as a list, notice that I can also display them, or I can choose to display these in a paragraph, which means it'll be like the sentences will all be one after the other, and the students have to rearrange the sentences in the paragraph in order to make it correct. Isn't that fun? As before, you can align it to outcomes. You can bank the item to a question bank. You can add your feedback down here. You can award your points here and then click done. So again, all I did was just told my students exactly what I wanted them to do. And you enter it correctly in Canvas. So I entered it the correct order here, at least I think it is the correct order, and then Canvas will scramble it for me. Okay. So I'm going to click done. And now you can see there's how it kind of looked to the student. They would have to click and drag these items around in order to get them in the correct sequence. Or you could leave it to where it's basically like a stack, one on top of the other, where they have to rearrange and sort them in the right order there. Okay. All right, let's do the next question. The next one is probably my absolute favoritist one. It's called hotspot. So in this particular question type, let me go down here and add another question. I'm going to choose hotspot this time. And a hotspot question is where you would upload an image here. And again, think maps, think body, human body or whatever. Think some kind of something where they have to choose the correct thing on the image in order to get the answer correctly. This works really well for, again, like nursing and biology and geography and all kinds of other where you have to name parts or label things or whatever. You only do get one hotspot answer per question. So that is a little bit limiting, but we'll talk a little bit about how we can work around that too. So here is where I would add the question stem. So maybe I want them to find the sternum. I'm going to upload a skeletal system here. This is in honor of my dad. He was an X-ray technician all of my life. He was chief of lab at the local hospital as well as the X-ray guy. And so I spent a lot of time at the hospital looking at X-ray film, standing with a lead apron behind the thing as Dad took X-rays of people. And so here I'm going to just go out here and add an image. So I'm going to go out and find my images here. Let me see if I can go to my image folder. Here we go. And I'm just going to type in the skeletal system. This is just an image I grabbed. And I'm going to add that image here to this test question. Notice it's now going to ask me to draw the hotspot shape. So who knows where the sternum is? Where's the sternum?
The middle of the chest, between the rib cage.
Right there. There you go. Right, a little fish-looking bone right there in the middle of the chest. The xiphoid process and the sternum is all right there. So it's going to ask me, it's going to give me some options of how to draw that hotspot shape. So I could choose this square here, but notice that if I choose the square and start drawing the shape, that it's not perfect. It's going to incorporate, some of the ribs and things like that. Same thing with the oval. If I choose the oval, it gets a little bit better. I can if I hold my mouth just right, I can pretty much get that same item there to draw the shape. Now, keep in mind, the student will not see this blue part. They're going to be presented with a blank image. They have to drop a pin essentially where the correct answer is. Okay. So they will have no hints as far as where that is. Notice that you have this polygon shape. This is what the tool that you might use. It takes a little getting used to, but this tool allows you to kind of draw oddly shaped things. You can kind of highlight oddly shaped things. The way it works is if you choose polygon, I'm going to zoom in here just a little bit more so we can all see it, is you find a starting place. Notice I have this little cross here. And if I click my mouse one time, click and drag my mouse over a little bit, you'll see that little blue line forming. And everywhere I want a curve to be or a corner to be, I will click. So I go to here, click, drag, click, drag, click, drag, click, wherever I want the points to appear. And notice that it is giving me a really nice shape here, like that, okay? And so that does a better job, I think, of drawing that weird shaped bone, okay? Once you have that, again, you have the ability to align outcomes to this, add it to the bank, choose your point value, add your comments if they get it right or wrong or whatever. Now, I know Josie's like, awesome, me too. I love that. Yeah. So mathematically, what if you had an image of a math equation and you're like, where to, you draw the hot spot on the different part, or maybe you teach languages or English or something, and you have a sentence and, identify where the, part of speech is or whatever. If you're teaching freshman English or something, then you might see that there as well. So you can use it for a number of things, is what I'm saying. I mentioned before that the only bummer is I can't add another hotspot to this image. So if I were to say, and find the skull, I couldn't go up here and start drawing the skull. Only one image or one hotspot per image. However, one thing you can do with your question, if you want to kind of keep this same question, and maybe I did want my students to find the mandible, all right? I can come up here to duplicate, and you can do this with any question. As I'm building it, I'm going to go up here and hit duplicate, and it's going to create a duplicate of this question. In this case, I can edit it and say, now find the mandible or whatever. And then if I zoom in on this image, I can then start drawing, I can start drawing the same polygon here around the mandible. Like that. Okay. And now I've got another one. I can continue doing that. Just kind of recycling the same image. You guys get the idea. Okay. So the next type of question we're going to add here is one called categorization. This is also one that really lends itself for a number of different topics, different subjects. But if I click plus here, I'm going to choose categorization this time. And what this is, think about sorting items into their respective categories. So again, here, maybe I'm going to have, for example, again, I don't have to put a question title if I don't want to, but maybe I want to use the example that I provided here, and that is, place the following items into their correct category. Now, notice that you have two categories right here, okay? You can add more categories. So if you want to give them more choices of categories, you can add additional categories. Now, for the two that I already have here, you'll notice that it's going to ask me to give it a name, and I have some answers, and I can add as many answers as I want. So I'm just going to stick to two categories, but just know that you can add more if you want to. So here for the first one, I'm going to have invertebrates. And then over here, I'm going to have vertebrates, right? Now for each answer, for vertebrates, again, in Canvas, you're going to build it correctly. So I'm going to have, for example, fish, add an answer here for humans, maybe add an answer here for birds. And then for invertebrates, I'm going to put the Dallas Cowboys. No, I'm just kidding. A sad part is I grew up a Cowboys fan. They just disappoint me all the time. So I'm going to put like crabs, spiders, maybe insects or something like that. Okay, non-vertebrate things. So again, you can have it like that or whatever. And just like before, you can also align it to outcomes, add banking, choose your point value, add your comments or whatever, and then you can move on. So I've just added two categories of items, and then I associated them with what they are. When the student sees this, that's going to scramble it for them. Okay. Our last item is going to be stimulus. So stimulus is a new question type as well. And this is where you would present something to your student. So on this one here, maybe I'm going to have them read a poem, and I can ask them questions about the poem. So here I'm going to say, maybe The Mending Wall, by Robert Frost or whatever. The instructions would be, read the poem, answer the questions or whatever. Okay. Down here is where I would put my stimulus. Now, if I was teaching art or music or something, remember, I could drop in audio or video files here. I could add an image. If I was teaching art, I could upload an image here or something like that. Whatever I want to choose to add here. Just in my example, I just chose a poem that most people have heard of or knows called Mending Wall. And I'm just going to copy and paste that into our area here. And there's the poem. Okay, now you're going to notice then. Oh, yeah, you could use a scenario or absolutely. Yeah, Christy says, could we use this as a scenario or case study? Yeah, read this case study and answer these questions. What should so have done differently? Or what could have been, to avoid whatever. So, yeah, you can certainly, that is a very good use of the stimulus question. Thank you. So notice once you have the stimulus inserted, it's going to ask you where you want to insert the questions. You want to add the questions to the left or the right or add it below. I typically like to add it to the right, okay? And then I go down and you can item bank this and click done. And notice that when you do that, it'll start asking you to attach questions. So the way it's going to look to the student is on the left, they're going to have the poem. On the right, I'm going to add questions, and it's going to work exactly as it did above. I'm just going to add one multiple choice question just because. Or maybe I'll just add a true false just to get the sense of it. So you know how it works. You get your question title. You can say the neighbors in the poem met each other to discuss politics or whatever. And then you'd say that's false. And then I could have, point value. I can add my comments. Again, you can bank these questions, everything you want to do that. Notice that you can add more questions. So you might have 5 or 6 questions based on this case study or this poem here. Okay. So now I'm going to add that. And now I've got my question answered. Okay. Now that it's done, I do want to show you a couple of other things. I know we're getting close to time, but if you'll give me just 2 more minutes, I think we will be able to work through some of this as well. One thing I wanted to show you is now that we have it built, up in the upper right-hand corner, you do have the 3 dots up here. You will notice that once you have the quiz ready to go, you will be able to print a blank quiz if you want to. So if you have students that need to take the quiz offline, you could actually have a blank quiz with the key or just a blank quiz. Something you really can't do with a lot of other learning management systems. This is sort of unique to the new quizzes here. If you do have an item bank or question banks, as we like to call them as well, you can also add questions to the test from a bank. If you do not have a bank already, you can build an item bank, all right? And your IDs can help you with that as far as if you are importing questions from Blackboard and things, and you want to enter them and build a bank for that, you can do that. Remember, as you're building a quiz, you can also choose to create a bank as well. So if you have a bank that you want to look at, there's my chapter 12 item bank that has a couple of questions in it. And if I want these questions on a new test, I can come out to that bank. I can choose them by clicking them one at a time, and they'll add it to my test here. I can also bring them all in at once, and then I can choose how many questions I want to use out of the item bank. Okay. I know we'll have a lot more time to talk about this as well. So yeah, so you'll have the bow tie questions. Oh yeah, okay, this is good. Yeah, the NGN bow tie questions. I'm not familiar with that term, but I'm assuming to look at the YouTube videos. Rob posted a video for you all to kind of look at as well.
So yeah, nursing faculty, this is the next generation nursing test questions for NCLEX. Okay. So this is how you create what's called a bow tie question using new quizzes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah. And I know you guys have a ton of different accrediting, site bodies as well, in addition to the one that's visiting you guys pretty soon here. Just very quickly, if once you have the test built, if you ever want to look at the way the test looks as a student, Remember, you can go out and preview the test, and it will give you sort of what the student sees. There's my WSU Tech sample quiz. And once I have it, I can always go to build again. And at the top, I should be able to preview this quiz as a test student. There it is over here. So you can preview it, and this will show you sort of what the student sees. And you can go in and act. You notice that there's find the sternum, and so it's going to give you a crosshair and let you drop a pin where the sternum is. You'll see that there's your answers. I've added it twice. Remember, I pulled one from the thing, so I could say Chaucer, is the British literature guy. Maybe I'll get this one wrong. Or whatever. And then down here, notice that you can change these sentences around, put them in the right order. And there it is in order. Okay. With the categorization question, you can click and drag these items where they belong. Notice it scrambles vertebrates and invertebrates. I can put those in order. And you can see how you can preview your test pretty easily. There's the mandible right there. There's that multiple choice question, as I lay dying. Down here is that stimulus question. If I had more questions, they would appear here. And then I can hit submit. It should give me a notice that there is a timer up at the top. I don't know if you saw that or not. I should have pointed it out. Oh, getting a transcript to the video. Yes, I believe we should be able to transcript. If it doesn't automatically generate a transcript, if I didn't have captioning on or didn't have a transcript, I can create one though, whoever asked that. Okay. You can see I made a 76 on it. There's my answers and so on. Okay. All right. Good stuff. One last little thing I wanted to share with you, and that is the reporting. I'm going to actually go into another course that actually has some data in it, and we're going to call it a day. So let me find our reporting here. So this is a colleague of mine, Helen. This is her quizzes out here, as you can see. If I go to her 4.7 management quiz and go to build, a couple of things you're going to see here is this area called reports up here. So in the reports area, you do have a quiz and item analysis. So for my nursing folks, I know this is very important, where you can review the report, or you can generate the report here. This will give you sort of a rundown of the grade, the score distribution here. It'll tell you what the high score was, the mean score, the low score, and how much the average time it took students to complete this. Okay. In addition to that, you can go in and see the level of difficulty for each of those. There is the discrimination index. There's all kinds of what percentage of the students got it right, that kind of stuff. What I'd be looking for here is if I had some wild variations as far as percentages were concerned, as far as who got it right, that might be an indicator that the question was bad, or maybe we didn't cover it in class like we should have. And maybe it had a all right, Rob, you're scaring me. You're getting excited about point by serial data. You must be a data person. Helen, the one that I'm in here with, she is our data diva, is what we call her. She's a data junkie and stuff. I am not as well versed in that, but yes, it does have point by serial. It's got all kinds of great information. By the way, there is this little for light reading. There is the item here as well. The question was, can you create a report out of this? Yes, you can. There is a way to export this as a let me go back to reports here. Think you can download this as a, maybe it's this one. Maybe it is in this one. There's a way to download it as a CSV file, if I'm not mistaken. I got to remember where that is though. Oh, you did. It lived by the point by serial. Yes, absolutely. Chrome Blocks Alpha is another one there. There is, I believe there's a way of, I've just got to remember where it is, that there is a way, I believe, to download the data as a spreadsheet. Just have to remember where that's located. You do have the quiz. Oh, the quiz and item analysis. Maybe this is it. This is well, that's the same one, I think. It seems like there is a way to do that, though. I just got to remember. I will find the answer to that about how to get that information as a report. If you are using outcomes, Helen here is using some outcomes. So there is an outcomes report feature here that will give you an outcomes analysis. And again, she has quite a few outcomes in here that she's used for different things. It might take a second for it to spin up, but there. So you can see the different outcomes. I can see over here, and you can export this as a CSV file. That is something that's bright and centered right there in the clear. You do have the ability to grab the CSV file for your outcomes report. Up here, you can see that this is the outcome itself. 15 mastered, 2 didn't meet. You can see the outcome itself and so on. I can also see which of my students mastered these outcomes and which one didn't. If I use my little scroll button here, I have a student down here that didn't meet some of these requirements, some of these outcomes here as well. There is also a learning mastery gradebook for each student where I can actually go in and see all the outcomes that were used and the artifacts that they were used in for this as well. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that in the coming next couple of weeks with regard to reporting, outcome reporting, and all that, and how to create rubrics using outcomes and so on. I hope that this has been beneficial to you. Certainly, it's been a lot of fun getting to meet everyone and getting to kind of know what you all teach or whatever. You are kind of stuck with me for the next few sessions. So I hope you liked what you saw. It's certainly a lot of fun. I enjoy doing this. I do want to make sure that you get your badge for attending today. So stick around just for a little bit. I'm going to put the badge up here. Let's just zip through all this, all these things together. Here we go. There we go. So you do get badges for attending our trainings. And so if you're not a badge grabber, well, you can become one right away. If you have nice things to say, please fill out that survey. If you don't, then please skip. No, I'm just kidding. Your feedback is important. I would appreciate your feedback if you, it does help me improve what I do. So if you do have constructive feedback, please take a moment to fill that out. But mainly grab that badge. If you're new to badges, it might ask you to enter an email address. Enter your WSU Tech email addresses. I think you'll find it's a lot easier to manage your badges using your school account. So definitely do that. You may be asked to create your own Badger account, which takes just a second to do. And then once you've done that, every other badge you earn will be right there with you. You can share them out on your LinkedIn or put them on your digital resume. Honestly, that's exactly what I did. And I had it on my LinkedIn. And when I applied it in Structure, I don't know if having all those Canvas badges helped, but it probably didn't hurt. So anyway, please feel free to do that. I hope everybody has a great weekend. I look forward to seeing everybody on Monday. So see you soon. Take care, everyone.